Hey there tech fans, Rick here again with a quick review of the DJI Mavic 3 drone. And in today's video, I'd like to pass along 5 really important tips for new flyers that'll keep you safe when you're up in the air and ensure that you have a ton of fun when you're flying your drone. Now these 5 tips are things that I've learned over the years. I've been flying drones for a long time, and I also fly with a lot of new flyers that ask me, Rick, what's the best way to get comfortable flying your drone? Well, this first tip is really important, and I know it's a little bit boring, but a drone is a lot of fun, but it's also something that's regulated by the FAA. And there's a set of rules out there that govern where you can fly the drone, how far you can fly it away, what kind of behaviors expected, understanding what no-fly zones are all about. So my first recommendation for any new flyer is to understand what the basic rules of the FAA are so that you don't violate those. Now the rules are pretty simple. Basically, you have to keep the drone under 400 feet above you, so AGL, above ground level, which means it's not going to get up there where the planes are flying because the planes can't come below 500 feet, so you're in a safe zone. You have to keep the drone in your visual line of sight, which means you always have to be able to see the drone as far as you're flying it, because some of these drones, like this one, can go 12 kilometers away, which you couldn't possibly see the drone if it's that far away from you, and you're breaking the rules by going beyond visual line of sight. So keep it close enough where you can see it. If you're having a hard time seeing it, you can put a little strobe on the top of it that'll blink every so often, and you can really extend the distance you can fly it. You also can't fly near airports or other sensitive locations called NFZs. And what's nice about the DJI drones is that they have built-in maps to let you know if you try to put it up in an area that you're not allowed to fly, it'll tell you you can't take off in this area. And if you're near an area where you can't fly and you put the drone up, it'll fly up to the edge of that area and tell you you're about to enter an NFZ, put the drone on the ground, you can't fly over here. And that's not that big a deal. I know a lot of people are kind of cranky about that, but honestly, when you look at the map of the United States in particular, 99.5% of the country is wide open for flying a drone. So it's not like there's a lot of places you can't fly, but just use your head. All right, so that's the first tip. Just get that out of the way. And you can go on the FAA website. I think there's like 8 rules on there that you have to pay attention to. Don't fly over people. Don't fly over traffic. Stay out of the NFZs. Keep it under 400 feet and keep it in visual line of sight and you'll be just fine. All right, the next one is you really need to know the drone. And what I mean by that is you're controlling a flying robot, which is incredibly sophisticated with the Mavic 3. And even if you're flying a smaller drone, there's a lot of brains built into that robot. And that robot's going to do things to protect you in most cases. So if you try to do something dumb, the drone's going to take over and protect you. So you need to understand, number one, what all those safety features are. And second, and more importantly, you've got to develop a relationship when you're flying the drone. And I know that sounds a little bit weird, but you're controlling it from this little remote controller, and this thing's flying a couple thousand feet away. So you want to make sure your relationship with that drone is rock solid. My recommendation is fly it low and slow near you first when you first put it up in the air. Maybe only take it up 5 feet, take it out 10 feet, get a comfort for how it moves, how quickly it responds to the joysticks. And the other thing that's interesting is when the drone is facing the same direction you are, all the controls make sense. When the drone's facing you, everything is reversed. And that takes a little bit of time to get used to. And I promise you, the first time the drone's coming back home and you want to go to the right and you move the joystick to the right and it goes to the left because that's its right, it's going to surprise you. So spend some time and get to know the drone. And the other thing I'll mention is every drone is different because I fly a lot of different DJI drones, and I can promise you the Mini 3 Pro is different than the Air 2S, is different than the Mavic 3 in the way it responds to joystick control. So spend a few minutes, get to know the drone. That's really important. You also want to practice for trouble because there are going to be situations you're going to get in, they're going to scare you. You're going to get up in the air, maybe you've lost sight of the drone. That's the absolute worst time to figure out what a return to home button does, right? You want to make sure well in advance of any kind of scary situation that you know how to trigger a return to home and also how to pause the drone, because all of the DJI drones have a pause button right here that you can hit. That's the return to home button as well. When you hit the return to home button, it'll actually elevate to a certain height that you set in the application, fly back to where it took off and land exactly where it took off. But that pause button is important as well, because if you're flying and you're seeing through the camera that you're heading for a tree, you can tag that pause button and the drone will actually reverse the propellers and pull back. So it's going to save you from crashing into that tree. But practice those things. Don't just start flying and figure them out later, because I promise you, they're not going to help you. You're going to get lost out there in the wilderness. You're not going to find the return to home button, and all of a sudden panic's going to set in, and your blood pressure is going to go up, and you're going to start wondering, where's my drone? It's up there in the air someplace. So practice for trouble well in advance. The other thing I'd like to say, the fourth tip is start slow. These drones are a ton of fun, and they're incredibly sophisticated. They'll fly a long ways, they'll fly fast, they'll fly for long periods of time up in the air. And your tendency, or at least my tendency when I first started flying, was, let's see what this drone can do, which is a really bad attitude, because even though you may not think of yourself as a pilot, you're a pilot. You're flying something that's up in the air. You're officially a pilot. Pilots are hands down the most conservative people I know, and I've met a lot of them. I fly with a lot of them. They don't take chances. So start slow, get to know the drone, fly it close to the ground. If you can find a field that has trees all the way around it that are, 70 feet high, that's the perfect place to practice, because if something goes crazy with the drone or you lose control of it, the worst that's going to happen is it's going to smack into a tree and fall to the ground. You change a few propellers and you're good to go. If you take it out in a wide open area or decide to fly it over the bay, if something goes horribly wrong, that drone's heading for the water. So start slow, get comfortable with the drone, because I promise you the one thing that scares pilots away from the hobby more than anything else is the fact that they've done something they weren't prepared for, and then they can never get out there and fly that drone again. They've either lost the drone, they've crashed the drone, or something else has happened where it's really scared them, and then they're like, I'm done with the hobby. So start slow, build up your skills over time, and you're gonna do much better. And then the last thing I'll mention is that DJI drones typically have a lot of automation built into them. So they've got artificial intelligence inside that will avoid crashes, that'll help you navigate through really complex environments. But the automation around filming is incredibly cool. So when you put the drone up, once you get comfortable with it, and you want to do that classic circle where you're standing in the middle looking up at the drone and it's circling you, showing the background, showing the beautiful area you're in, which is wonderful for a vacation, use the automation, because the drone is programmed to do that. Now, I'm not saying you can't do it by mastering the sticks, but I can promise you it's going to take a long time for you to look at an object like a smokestack or maybe a silo and circle that and keep it directly in the center of the frame. It's going to take time to do that, and that's a skill that I'd recommend practicing because you want to be a better pilot. But use the automation features built into the drone, because at the push of a button, DJI's programmed the drone to actually keep that silo in the middle of the image and circle it and maintain a constant height and a constant cadence around it. So use the automation. That's why it's built in. You can pretty much, once you get comfortable flying it, hit a few buttons and capture some incredibly cool footage. And in the application that DJI provides with their drones, there's quick editing software in there as well that you can use to put music to it, backgrounds in it, and cut a little clip together that you can immediately post to your social media sites. So use the automation. So again, to review, you got to be careful with the drones. Know the rules, know the drone, practice for trouble, start slow, which is probably the best rule I can give you, and then finally use the automation, use the artificial intelligence features built into the drone, and you're going to have a lot of fun. Now, I've talked specifically about the Mavic 3. This is an outstanding drone. This is top of the line drone as far as DJI makes today. It's perfect for commercial work, it's perfect for hobbyists, and it's just a magical drone that's got everything that DJI's ever invented built into the drone. And to me, it's a brilliant flying robot that is just got everything you need. Now, they make a lot of other drones. You may want to consider one that's smaller to get started, but if you're looking for the commercial drone, this is the one to go with today. And that's really all I had. So thanks an awful lot for watching. I hope you found these tips helpful, and until next time, as always, stay nerdy.